One of the biggest, often overlooked mysteries of the Killing Rock saga is the life of Preston McCalvin Fleming. Who was he? How did he get mixed up in the story of the Pound Gap Massacre? Why did he die in West Virginia by a shootout with a Wise County posse? Why was he involved with the Vanovers? Born as Preston McCalvin Cal Fleming on October 15, 1868, in Buchanan County, Virginia, to Robert Jefferson, Big Jeff, and Margaret Rose Fleming. He was one of 9 brothers and sisters. He is often spoken about with his brother Henan, and the story stops with his death. But we are hoping to shed a little light on who he actually was and if the story about him is true. The popular story is often told that Samuel McKeenan Henan Fleming, Cal's brother, was sweet upon Catherine Vanover Fleming. It was widely known that Cal was sweet upon another of Henry Vanover's daughters, but it is never told which one of them had caught his eye. However, he is noted to be at the Vanover farm quite a bit with his brother Henan. Cordelia Cook was born on November 20th, 1875 in Floyd County, Kentucky, to Solomon Cook and Sadie Hall McPeak. She was one of 3 children born to the union. It is not clear when or how she met Cal Fleming. According to the Find a Grave records online, Preston McCalvin Fleming was married to Cordelia Cook sometime in 1889. As of this date, we have not found the marriage certificate or the place of the wedding. However, if the marriage is true, then Cal would have been at least 21 years old. He would have been 7 years the senior to his bride, Cordelia, who would have been 14 years old at that time. It is also reported that during this union, Lydia LaCosta Fleming was born on December 31st, 1890, in Wise, Virginia, to the married pair. Lydia would live to be 85 years old and would be the only child of Cal Fleming. Lydia would die at the age of 85 years old on December 9, 1976, in Clifton Forge, Virginia. After the death of Cal on January 14, 1894, Cordelia Cook Fleming would then marry again to Bryant Washington Francisco in 1898, who was her stepbrother from her mother, Sadie Hall Cook's second marriage. She would die on February 20th, 1954, at the age of 78 in Ashcamp, Kentucky. There is a record of the marriage with the state of Kentucky taking place in 1889, but there is no actual date listed, so that leaves us with questions. Common law marriages are common to the mountains even to this day. Even though there is no certificate of marriage, there is usually a small ceremony with family to let everyone know that the relationship is a permanent and a family and community condoned one. All children born to this union are considered to be legitimate and carry the father's name. Another thing to consider is that they did have a marriage certificate, but were possibly separated at the time. Neither party had filed for divorce in the court system at that time, and Cal was engaged to Cynthia, but they were not able to get married yet. For some reason, the marriage of Cal was never spoken of in the Oft Told Tales story. Why? Where was his wife and child staying during that time? Why were they not also at the Vanover farm if Cal was staying there, or at his father's home? On June 18, 1887, while working the fields in Rocky Hollow with his wife, Henry Vanover was ambushed and killed. Although the actual killer of Henry Vanover remains unknown, it is widely thought that Clifton Branham had murdered Henry Vanover. Henry Vanover was slain, and the killer was going to go to jail by his own confession, rather than to go to jail and face the gallows. The matter was considered to be closed, even though the Branham brothers repeatedly said that they did not kill Vanover. Let's take a look at Henry Vanover's daughter during the time of Henry's death. We have Catherine Vanover, who was 16, and she was engaged and would later marry Henan Fleming. Cynthia Vanover, who was 10, Vannie Vanover, who was 3, and Sarah Vanover, who was a newborn. So which child is a 21-year-old McCalvin Fleming supposed to be engaged to? This does not make sense at all and was not done at the time in the mountains. Cal would not have been courting the girl during that time because she would have been too young. A girl was usually married at the age of 14 in the mountains, younger if it was an arranged marriage, but it is simply not done for girls under the age of 12, and permission was very rarely granted. If you wish to see the actual dates of the births, refer to Find a Grave site for Henry Vanover, listed in the source information below. By the time of the Killing Rock, the closest possible girl that we think Cal could have been involved with was Cynthia. She would have been 15 by 1892. By that time, she would have been old enough for a relationship with Calvin. However, history does not name her, nor does it really confirm that they were engaged to be married. Could there be another reason for that? Henry Vanover was slain. Henry Vanover's widow, Sarah, was facing over 100 lawsuits over land and had a huge farm to run. Was Cal there working as a possible hired hand for farming? It would be possible that he was a hired hand and got the job because of his older brother was dating and did marry Catherine, the oldest daughter. Another possibility would be that Cal was a sharecropper for Henry Vanover. Back in those days, it would not be out of the ordinary for people who owned large tracts of land to hire out the local men to help tend the ground. Deals would be made for money, a place to live, food, or other barters for work that had to be done. Not a lot of things are passed down as to what kind of work that Cal Fleming actually did for Henry Vanover. We do know that Henry did own huge tracts of timberland, and it was also possible that Cal worked for Henry chopping down trees. We will never know for sure, as this part of the story has been lost to us over time. On May 14, 1892, the Doom Mullins party would be killed at the top of Jenkins Pound Mountain, at a place that would now be forever known as Killing Rock. 5 people were slain and no motive was ever given for the reason behind the massacre. On May 19th, Jane Mullins would once again change her story. She began telling everyone that Doc Taylor and the Fleming brothers were the shooters and that she had recognized their voices. Before this point of the story, Jane Mullins had repeatedly told everyone that she did not know who they were because they had green masks tied with a black band covering their faces. She had also stated that she tried to save Lorenza by pulling her under the wagon. She went on to say that when a pause in the gunfire came, she yelled out, "Boys, for the Lord's sake, do not shoot any more. You have killed them all. Let me stay here with them until someone finds us." But was he really on top of Pound Jenkins Mountain that fateful day? One of the biggest questions behind the Pound Gap Massacre is motive. What possible reason would Cal and Henan Fleming have for being on Pound Gap that fateful day? The reason handed down for 130 years to us was revenge. But was that so? Why would Cal and his brother Henan be out for revenge, as is so often reported? Why are the other sons of Henry never mentioned in the stories? Henry had 5 sons: Jacob Jake Everman Vanover, who was 27, Ulysses Grant Vanover, who was 14, Patrick Hagan Vanover, who was 11, and Henry Sam Melvin Vanover, who was 9, and James L. Bob Vanover, who was 4. So why is Jake and Ulysses never mentioned in the story? Surely they would be the first to step up wanting revenge for the death of their father, wouldn't they? Another wrinkle in the story is that the Fleming brothers were involved in the massacre is simply time. Henry Vanover was shot in his cornfield on June 18, 1887. The Killing Rock Massacre happened on May 14, 1892. So if the whole reason was for revenge, would it not stand to reason that it would not take 5 years for the Fleming brothers to do something? If they were the hotheads that history has claimed that they were, it would stand to reason that as soon as the Brennan brothers were accused of the crime, that they would have went after them instead. So why go after Ira Mullins? Another possible twist we have come across is the 100 lawsuits that Sarah Vanover faced from the squatters on her land. Ira Mullins and his wife Lorenza was among those that was suing the poor widow. So again, why go after them if they were all in a court of law? Did Ira have the strongest claim to the land? So why shoot Ira and his family? Why wait the 5 years to do it? And exactly what did Cal and Henan have to do with it at all, if anything? While doing research on Cal Fleming and his possible engagement, another possible motive as to why they were fingered in the crime came to us. What if someone didn't like it that the Fleming brothers were going to marry the richest marriageable ladies in the area of Jenkins? Cynthia and Catherine were both of marriageable age by 1892, and the land that their father had left behind was a gold mine in timber and coal. There would be many men that would have loved to have them as their brides for both them and their inheritance. The reason why we have thought that there is another suitor is because of what happened to one of Henry's daughters during this time. After the death of Henry, one of his daughters in the Oft Told Tales was beaten almost to death. There is also a possibility that she was violated. Why? For what purpose? It was after this happened that the widow Vanover sold the land to John Wright and left the area with her family. It is often thought that Lorenza had a money bag upon her person with at least $1,000 or more inside of it. The money bag was missing at the time that her body was found. Robbery has always been associated with the crime because of this. However, if the Fleming brothers were both living on the Vanover farm for either work or love, why would they be involved in a robbery? After all, Henry Vanover's widow had inherited all of his money and land, and they were staying with her. No money was ever found or said to be found with the Fleming brothers. So, if robbery was the motive for the crime, it would make no sense that they would have been involved. We will get into the story of the West Virginia battle in another untold tale of the Killing Rock Massacre. Thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we bring to you the history of the Appalachian Mountains. Please like, subscribe, and share below. Also hit the bell for notifications of future videos. And once again, be sure to leave us a "Hey y'all" in the comments section below.